Okay, we got a very interesting topic today. I'm going to read to you from an article. This was published at the end of 2018, right around Christmas time. Okay, here's what the article says. Quote, "The entrepreneur Elon Musk announced that one of his companies, Neuralink, was planning to save the human race by building a hard drive to be implanted in the brain. The goal, Musk explained, was to wire a chip into your skull, giving you the digital intelligence that is poised to surge far ahead of mere biological intelligence. Without that chip, that is, without fully incorporating artificial intelligence into ourselves, our species, Musk argued, is doomed. In the robotic, algorithm-dominated universe that lies just ahead, we will be restricted, if we survive at all, to a few protected zones, comparable to the steadily shrinking territories, little more than big cages, where the last chimpanzees and mountain gorillas eke out their existence."
What? Okay, number one, I've been on this earth for a good long time. I will not say how old I am, but I am old. I call myself decrepit sometimes. But if I survived, I think the rest of the human race will survive. But then again, kids today cannot think. They without their, having their cell phone in their hand. So if he's saying that the future, which is the kids today, will not be able to do anything without this chip in their brain, as far as walk, talk, eat, poop, I kind of believe that, because kids today ain't got no walking sense, I'm telling you right now.
Here's the problem, a couple problems. And there is this idea out there that we've got all this technology now and people can't operate it. They're not smart enough to operate it. Well, I realize a lot of people, maybe they don't know this technology, but the thing is that they say that, well, there's plenty of jobs out there, but people don't have the technical skills to do these jobs. There's a couple of problems with that. One is that if man has the intelligence to be able to create the technology, then other men can have the same intelligence to operate the technology. It's a lot easier to operate something that's already been invented than it is to actually invent whatever it is. So this argument that there are these jobs out there that people aren't trained to do, and so most people, and it's getting eventually to the point where most people won't have the skills to be able to do a regular job, is a lie. You look at the technological advances that have happened over the years. Think of like when Henry Ford made the assembly line. Now you had all these assembly line things that started back in 1910 and 1920s and on forward. That was technology to put together products faster. They didn't need people with a degree to be able to understand how to do that. They just needed people to do it. Now, to develop that stuff, took some skill, and maybe there weren't that many people who could do that, but actually replicating it isn't that hard. And you say, well, we're not in a manufacturing society anymore, we're in a service-oriented, and it's all computers and all that. But the thing is, when it comes to jobs, for the most part, the majority of jobs are dull, boring, do the same repetitive stuff over and over. That's what technology does. Technology takes something that maybe required some skill before and how to do this, and they've made it into a dull, repetitive job. I remember we watched Undercover Boss one time. They were showing the Oriental Trading Company, which is this company that sells all these little knickknacks for kids and crafts types of things for them to use. And they showed them in the warehouse. And the people, all they did was just operate this huge warehouse, and they operated this machine, and they punch in the machine, go to aisle A4, and go to the third row, and whatever it is, and then the machine goes out, and they press the button, and it goes out, and it goes and gets that item, and it brings it back to them and puts it in the box. And they were talking about how the people at those jobs were just bored to tears. They hated those jobs, but they got paid, so they did it. That's what technology does. To get the skills to figure out how to operate that machine and to go and get that certain item like that, that's the hard part. But to actually operate the machine, yeah, you got to learn how to do it. But it's not a big deal because you're going to do it 1,000 times every single day. So after you've done it 10, 15 times, now you know how to operate the machine. That's what technology does. I understand there will be some programmers and things and they have to get skills and go to school for programming to implement things. But for the most part, when it comes to the normal run-of-the-mill jobs that you need people in to actually implement stuff, it's not hard. It's some new skill you got to learn, but since you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, it's really easy to train the person. You look at colleges, for example. When you go to, when I went to college to become an accountant, I learned what you do as an accountant. But when you get your entry-level job as an accountant, it's not at all like you did in the college. You don't have to worry about debits and credits and everything because the machine does it for you. The computer, you just type in the amount of the invoice, and all of a sudden you've got your debit to accounts payable and your credit to cash, or whatever it is that it does in there. Your debit to the expense, your credit to accounts payable, and your debit to accounts payable and your credit to cash. That happens automatically behind the scenes. I don't have to input that. Technology, what it does, it doesn't make it more difficult for you where you have to have some big skill. What technology does, it makes jobs easier and more mundane. Even these more technical ones, like I mentioned, the accountant stuff. I had to learn accounting, how to do journal entries and all that when I was in school. And now I rarely do any journal entries because it's all done by the computer. You just type in the amount and it puts it in. In fact, even if you do journal entries, it will automatically put the cash entry. You just put the one side to it. It's something, technology makes things easier, more mundane, and more boring. You think of all those people that went to college. You got to get a college education to do this job. Think of most people probably nowadays are college educated. They have a degree. And ask yourself the question, do you actually use what you learned in that to get that degree? Most people don't, or they use a very small percentage. So it's just a piece of paper that you get because that's what they tell you need to have in order to get the good paying job. But do you actually use the degree? No. I mean, I got a degree in finance. I'm an accountant. And all that stuff I used when I was an accountant, in college, I don't use that today because you got computers to replace it. So this idea that you're not going to have the intelligence necessary to be able to do these jobs is crazy. It's actually the opposite. Before, the accountant sat down with a piece of paper and had to write out the entries and had to manually create the balance sheet and income statements and do all this stuff. Now, you just type some things in the computer and the computer spits it out. So it makes things easier, technology, not harder.
Well, it's like this. If he has this chip putting into people, well, just based on your computer, how many times do you need an update on your computer? Your computer has to update. You have to get a new software. Heck, look at your freaking iPhone. How many times every year you got to get a new iPhone because they've done something new to it? So if you get this thing in your head, then you're going to get a recall notice, number one, for your head because the chip was made in China and it's defective. And then number two, you're going to have to go in an assembly line to have the chip replaced for an updated chip.
Yeah. What if you have a virus? Then you go haywire. Isn't that what they did in Terminator? Isn't that what it's about? The machines took over because they were infected by some bad program. I mean, that's what would happen. What it is, and this is the second point, what's going on, is the dumbing down of people. You look at What's My Line, or You Bet Your Life, or you pull up some old game shows from the 50s, black and white game shows, and you listen to those people talk. They're just the average person who is on this game show. And you compare that to the average person on a game show today. What you watch, is that what it's called? You Bet Your Life? Or with Groucho Marx?
I think that's what it was.
You watch You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx and listen to those ordinary people on there. And then you watch an episode of Family Feud with Steve Harvey today. And you compare the two. And you're going to see that the average person today is stupid compared to the average person 70 years ago. And the reason is because the educational system is dumbing down people. So when Elon Musk talks about needing this chip to be able to survive, what it is, it's not that you can't understand the technology and you can't survive with this technological world. It's that the masses as a whole are being dumbed down to where they don't even know how to think. The reason I mentioned you go to college, and I learned some things in college and I don't use that today. The main thing that I learned in college that I use today, and probably the reason you need a degree to get those higher paying jobs, is I learned how to critically think, to analyze a problem and to figure out the solution. That's the main thing that I learned in college, and that's what I use today, and that's the value of the college education. But today, they don't teach people that. Kids will go through an entire day without using their brains. They go to school and they have all these books, but they don't learn English. We were at the Johnny Cash Museum in Arkansas a couple years ago, and there were letters or things that Johnny Cash had written as a kid. You compare those letters to second, third graders today and what they write. Johnny Cash had complete sentences and thoughts. He spelled the words correctly. He had good grammar. You understood what he wrote. And he was just an average student. He wasn't some genius when it came to English. But then you look at what kids write today. Their spelling is atrocious. They don't know how to spell anything because the computers do it all for them. They don't know how to think anymore because they're not taught how to think. They watch television and mind-numbed stuff that doesn't have any intelligent thought. It's all these sex and violence. It's all going to their primal urges. That's why the book of Jude calls people natural brute beasts, and 2 Peter 2 calls them that. They're not using their brains. So what the educational system, so-called educational system, and all the billions of dollars that go into that, all it's doing is it's not training people to think. It's training people to go, whatever feels right, do it. Go ahead.
What did he say? Something about we wouldn't get that far, or we'll be caged in, or something like that. What was it?
In the robotic algorithm-dominated universe that lies just ahead, we will be restricted, if we survive at all, to a few protected zones comparable to the steadily shrinking territories, little more than big cages where the last chimpanzees and mountain gorillas eke out their existence.
Okay, zones and restricted. What the heck is he talking about?
Well, what he's talking about is because robots and technology control the entire world, that those who don't have these chips implanted into their brains, these hard drives, they won't have the intelligence to be able to survive in those worlds. And so it's sort of like a mental institution. It's that the people who are in a mental institution aren't smart enough to survive in the real world. And he's saying that this real world is going to be so complicated and so sophisticated that the brain that God gave us isn't capable of surviving in that world. And so you will need to have this hard drive wired to your brain in order for you to survive. And if you don't have that, then they're just going to put you in a mental institution, basically in territories where people didn't take this chip because you can't think, you can't operate in the world.
Well, it's like this. The kids today, they can't think or do anything, and they play on their phones all day that long, and computers and stuff. They're always doing that stuff. And the kids today, I mean, they're just dumb. You say, well, they know how to work phones and stuff like that. Heck, a monkey can work a phone. But the thing is, that just shows if he's wanting to put everybody that doesn't get this chip into like a mental institution or something, saying they can't work, work a computer or something to that nature. I mean, that's pretty much what the Antichrist is going to do. You take his chip, and if you don't take his chip, he pretty much is really going to kill you. He won't lock you away. He'll just kill you.
Yeah, and that's the point I was trying to get at, is that because what they're doing in educational institutions is they are spending all this money, but the kids aren't learning how to think. And when it comes to your brain, if you don't use it, you lose it. And then in addition to that, not only do they have that, but they're also giving people are hooked on drugs. And whether they're illegal drugs or not, it's not the point. It's some kind of chemical, mind-altering drugs that most everybody is taking nowadays for some condition. And they're getting younger and younger with these drugs, so now we're kids. They are taking them. In fact, I think, didn't we just see some kind of news article about some babies, injecting some drugs into them to try to prevent diseases? And that's what they do nowadays. When babies are born, they get like 30 or 40 shots. I don't know what they shoot them with, but something to prevent them from getting these diseases.
Yeah.
And so they're just going to do more and more. And then what they're going to end up doing is, when these babies are born, they'll put a chip in their head, and then they'll be able to, a chip, all you do, you can just reprogram that, and you can put whatever information you want in there. And then they'll put these chemicals into them that supposedly keep them from getting these diseases. But what it's actually doing is it's altering their chemical composition to where they can't use their brain. So it's not that God didn't give them an intelligent brain, it's that they never use it, and their brains are numbed, their mind numbed by these mind-altering drugs that they'll put into them. And so what they're doing is they're changing the people into robots. And I don't doubt that when you come... Now, the Antichrist, the mark of the beast, is an actual mark that goes in the forehead or on the hand, and it enables you to buy or sell. Is that a chip? I don't know. But I don't doubt that they're going to be doing that to people. And then when you program in the hard drive, this article here, he continues, he says, "My faith in humanity has been a little shaken this year, Musk declared, but I'm still pro-humanity." It says that he is a remarkable visionary who dreams that his neuroscience company, with its proposed electrode-to-neuron interface at a micro level, will cure such afflictions as dementia and paralysis. But there is a huge gap between, say, repairing spinal cord injuries by implanting electrodes in the brain and implanting an intelligence-enhancing AI chip, as Neuralink aims to do. The one restores an injured human to full mobility. The other alters the very nature of the human, at least as it has been conceived for millennia across a substantial part of the globe. You see, what he's doing is, he says, it will cure such afflictions as dementia and paralysis. But actually what it's doing is it's causing everybody to have dementia. Dementia is where your brain doesn't operate normally. You can't function in society with dementia because you can't think and go through a normal process. And so what he's trying to do is, if they insert chemicals into these babies when they're born so that you can't use your brain, and then you put this chip in here, then all you do is rely upon the programming of what they put in there. So then that's ultimate dementia. It's no use of brain, and it's all this hard drive and programming of whatever satanic policy of lie that they want to put in there. Go ahead.
Oh, what I was going to say is the fact that they're already doing that in babies. They're injecting them to the point. See, when I was a kid, I think there was only like 2 shots I got when I was a kid. Now there's like 30, 40 shots or something. When a baby's born, you got to get. But the thing is, you got autism. You got Down syndrome. They say, oh, it's, due to, the genes. It's something in your genes back in, the day. And then they finally decided to come out and say, no, autism was due to all these shots that they're giving these kids. So you have a lot of kids that have autism. There's some, smart autistic kids, but majority of them, they can't function without living in a home or something. They don't know how to either clean themselves, they don't know how to wash dishes, a lot of them have issues. And that's what Elon Musk is doing. He's creating, they're putting things into children, and they think they're trying to make them intelligent when really they're making it worse. And he thinks that it's going to solve dementia. Just to let people know, people think dementia is hereditary. That's another thing I'm going to be putting out video on. I have pretty much proof and friends and know people that dementia was not in their family. It's not hereditary. It has a lot to do with all these drugs that they're putting people on. And also, besides autism and Down syndrome, you've got a whole buttload of people that are so-called depressed, and they're putting them on pills. There's a lot of people that just can't handle today, and it's not they can't handle computers. They just can't handle living. And a lot of them freak out, especially and I've seen it, and don't say, you don't know what you're talking about. I have friends and I have relatives that had depression, and let me tell you something, they will freak out on you. So will bipolarism. They'll be nice 1 second and turn around like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and freak out on you. And I had a co-worker that did that. She was like, you never knew one day from the other. You didn't know what to say to her. If you said good morning, what's good about it? Oh, good Lord. And by the afternoon, she was like, isn't it a wonderful day? The sun's come out. And heck, look at them. When it rains, they're, oh my Lord, they are like, they're so depressed. The world, I just want to kill myself. And then the sun comes out and they're like, oh, it's a wonderful day. It's like, what the hey? This is what Elon Musk is this is his society. The kids today. That's his society. If he puts a chip in them, it's going to make it even worse.
Here's the primary issue here. God is the possessor of heaven and earth and desires all people to worship him. Satan wants to be the possessor of heaven and earth and desires all people to worship him. God, the main difference between God and Satan, there are a lot of other differences, but the difference in that goal there is that God only wants what's good for you. He only wants the good. He doesn't want you to suffer. He doesn't like evil. He wants to show his love to you and have joy in God for all eternity. And he realizes the only way you are going to be genuinely happy for your entire existence, for all eternity, all the time, is when you make the free will decision to allow Christ to live in you, to trust in the gospel, and ultimately that means Christ living in you for all eternity. It's all about free will. You make the decision that I'm a sinner and I want Christ to live in me. I trust in what God did for me. He gives you the gift of eternal life, and in all eternity, Christ will live in you. That's God's goal, is for you to worship Him, yes, but to do so from a free will decision. Satan wants all people to worship him, and he doesn't care how he does it. He will lie, cheat, and steal. Ephesians 4 talks about that they're tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men and cunning craftiness, whereby they lie in wait to deceive. Satan wants all to worship him, and he will do it by any means necessary. The ends justifies the means for Satan. And so the goal then for Satan is to take away your free will. If he takes away your free will, and a chip or a hard drive is implanted into your brain to replace your free will, and you are just a mind-numbed robot, which all you do is follow instructions from that hard drive, then Satan wins. Satan controls the entire universe, because then all people worship him because he forces them to worship him. See, God could have done that in the beginning. He's the one who created us. He could have created us as robots that were forced to serve him. But there is no love, joy, peace, gentleness, goodness, faith, all those fruits of the Spirit. They're completely absent when you don't use your free will to allow God to work through you, and you are forced to serve him. And so God gives free will. And what Elon Musk and all these people, the artificial intelligence and the hard drive, they're not pro-humanity. They're pro-Satan. They are trying to create a society that eliminates your free will, and so that all are mind-numb robots that worship Satan.
Well, you're talking about eliminates free will, and if you want to think about it, you pretty much if Elon Musk has his way, you're a slave. And you know how African Americans are like, oh, let's get rid of all the anything having to do with Civil War, the Confederate side, so forth, take the rebel flag down, take the statues down and stuff. But if you think about it, this right here is like going back to slavery. You put that in, Elon Musk put that in you, you're a slave. You have to do what he says, and he's going to be the one in control. This is one man that would be in control. It's not going to be, oh, you'll have freedom. You'll think things out of the box. You'll be enlightened. No, you'll be a slave. Because it's no different than slavery. Back in the day, they got branded, so they know if a slave ran away, they looked at him, they see a certain mark, they knew that slave went to what plantation, and they also shackled them. So if you think about it, it's slavery. That's pretty much what they're wanting to put people under, slavery.
And that's what, you can already see that going toward that. They make you take mind-numbing drugs to alter your chemical composition so that you can't think anymore. Lana's grandmother has dementia. Well, to handle that, she has to take drugs. Well, that's good for her, because then she doesn't, break out in violence. But she's still not able to think. Drugs, they may make you feel good. They may make you operate like people want you to operate and function and be a nice person in society. But they don't enhance your cognitive skills. So you feel happy when you take a drug. So you have a good disposition and all that. But you can't you can't think, because they can't give you smart pills, what I'm saying. They don't give you a pill to make you smart. And they say, oh, well, that's taken care of by this. He's planning to save the human race by building a hard drive to be implanted in the brain. The goal is to wire a chip into your skull, giving you the digital intelligence that is poised to surge far ahead of mere biological intelligence. Digital intelligence means, okay, so what they do is they give you all these drugs as a kid to make your mind numb, so now you can't think. and then they replace it with the digital intelligence of the chip or the hard drive. So now you don't think at all. You think dementia's bad. He says he's going to cure dementia. Well, this is far worse than dementia because you don't have the ability to think. They've taken away your ability to think by numbing your mind with these drugs, and then they replace it with their own brain. So basically what it is taking the brain that God gave you and replace it with a creation of man that is in line with what Satan wants you to think. Just think of what the educational institutions teach today. There is no God, that evolution is true, that anything of the spirit realm is false and you shouldn't believe it. That's what's going to be programmed into this hard drive. So you automatically at birth get this hard drive, and now you have no free will, and everything that you act upon is based upon Satan and his policy of evil. I guarantee you they're not going to upload a King James Bible into that hard drive, and even if they did, you're not going to understand the things of God, because 1 Corinthians 2 says the things of God only come to you by the Holy Ghost revealing it to you. And the Holy Ghost cannot be reduced to a chip. He is a spirit. He's not a machine. And he can't communicate to your spirit through a chip. And so it's all about taking away the free will that God has given you and the intelligence God has given you to think for yourself and to learn and grow in the knowledge of Him, and to completely discard that through mind-altering drugs, and then replacing your intelligence with an artificial intelligence that is of the devil. And they can program everything they want in there. And you think of the people who control that. You're not going to have riches. They are. Because they're going to program it in such a way that all the gold and silver and everything that they hold dear goes to them, and where you just meek out a mere existence. You think of corporations and those assembly lines. I mentioned Henry Ford. Those people on the assembly lines, they didn't have fancy mansions. They eked out a meager existence, and they had, enough to survive. Well, they're going to give you enough to survive, because if they don't, you're not going to keep coming back. So they just give you enough to survive. And they talk about the people who don't take the chip will be like chimpanzees and mountain gorillas, where they eke out their existence. No, they're going to be the only ones who actually believe, who, believe God, who have the ability to think. Go ahead.
Wait a minute. Did he just go against evolution, saying you're going to be like chimpanzees? In other words, he just said that chimpanzees and monkeys are idiots. So if we derive from chimps, or apes, as the evolution people want to say, then he pretty much says two things. Number one, everybody's stupid. And number two, we didn't come from chimpanzees and apes.
Yeah, that's a good point. He's just, the theory of natural selection is out the window if the only way I'm going to survive is by having a chip implanted. You're saying that society without interference of man, in other words, natural society, results in the destruction of man. So yeah, that's a good point. Evolution, survival of the fittest.
He just blew up his own theory.
Yeah, goes right against it.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it shows how stupid their theories are. Anyway, I'd love to hear comments from people on this. I think it's a very relevant topic for today, and it shows just how man is going against God and doing exactly what Satan wants, which is, if we can get away from free will and make everybody a robot, then everybody will fall down and worship Satan, because we'll program them to do so. Thanks for watching.